we started Palmr with this whole mission of self-care because of our life being crazy and the fact that we have 2 kids with type 1 diabetes.
If that one little thing is off, your whole rest of the day is off too, and it's going to be very difficult to get it back on track.
Or concerned about me, thinking that I would literally have a heart attack.
Yeah.
Because there was a part earlier this year where I was probably the most stressed that I had ever been in my entire life.
He's reaching the point of like burnout is when you start to self-doubt yourself so much. Hey Palmr fam, I'm Rebecca.
And I'm Nick.
And thanks so much for being here for another episode with us. And of course, like every week, we are so excited to be here. So let's start off with some Palmr updates.
Palmr Updates. All right, so it is the day before Thanksgiving.
Yes, if you're watching it the day this airs, we're releasing this the day before Thanksgiving, since tomorrow's Thanksgiving.
So you're getting a head start. That way you can listen to this as you drive to Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
There we go.
I like the way you think.
Alrighty. And then the other big thing is that we are currently in our pre-Black Friday sale, but that ends tomorrow if you're watching on the day it comes out. So it will end on Thanksgiving Day at midnight Eastern time. From then, our actual Black Friday sale will kick off. There's no link you need for it. It will just be live on the site, but it is a smaller discount. So if you want to go buy something for the biggest discount, you need to do it right now. Sign up for our mailing list. You will get a link to get 40% off. Then on Black Friday, it drops down to 35% off for Black Friday only, and it goes down from there.
Yeah, and I think we said last week how it's our biggest sale ever.
It is.
And it's really good. Little pro tip, go sign up to be subscribed to our email list, and then you'll get access to it.
Before we kind of get started, we did something really awesome.
Yes.
Which is we went to the Dancing for Diabetes event that is put on by Touched by Type 1. And I don't know about you, but I was completely blown away by it.
It was so amazing. It was the best night.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't even, it was our first year attending it. We've heard so much about it. We obviously had Evie on the weeks that we had her going to these classes. So we were getting like bits and pieces of what their actual performance was going to be. But the amount of talent that was there, it was just such a beautiful event because the dancers, not all of them have type 1, but they're here to support the mission of bringing awareness to type 1 diabetes. And people came from all over to participate in dance in these competition. It was amazing. I wanted to become a professional dancer after, but it didn't work out.
Yeah. I mean, I was just blown away. The whole staff, everything that Elizabeth from Touched by Type 1 has been doing for this was their 24th year putting it on.
Yes, and it started, fun fact, I don't know if you read it before, like the program started. It said she started this event in her parents' driveway.
Yes.
Which is so fascinating on what it has become. They sold out a room in the Dr. Phillips Center, which is wow. Like it blows my mind, but it's just so amazing.
And they also stream it online. I don't know if you knew that or not, but they stream it online. So next year, if you're not in Orlando, you can watch it. If you're in Orlando, you need to go. It was absolutely amazing. The amount of dancers, there was 400 dancers at this thing, and it was so good. Today's episode is all about being a caregiver and self-care. It's a topic that is very important to us, and so let's start it today on this topic. Let's start talking about what is the role of a T1D caregiver, and what are some of the biggest challenges that come with this responsibility?
So yeah, I think that being in my role of being a stepmom to Parker and Evie, you still take that primary role of the caregiver, but I am there as like additional support. And then there is times obviously where you might need to do something for work and I am the one in charge. Like I mentioned in the previous episode, It's a curse and also a blessing, but I'm a sponge pretty much. I absorb everything that's going on around me, the emotions, whatever the situation may be, I take it on and I want to fix it. I want to fix it for everyone. For example, if the kids have a stubborn high and they're not coming down quick enough or as quick as I would like it, then I feel like I get on you and I'm like, why are they still high? What is going on? I don't think their equipment is working properly. Like, have you done a physical check? Have you done this? Which then I just feel like it creates this anxiety and then it changes everything. The way I'm communicating with you changes, then you're getting frustrated. Then the way you're communicating to me changes, and then you're going in and like trying to help whatever's going on with the kids, and you seem frustrated, then they pick up on it, and it's just this constant like struggle of emotions that you can so quickly get into.
It really is, because we both, and I'm going to use myself as an example today, I was very irritated. And naturally, when I'm irritated, what do? You always take it out on the people that you love. I was trying to do something and everything seems to be going wrong. And what did I do? It made me into a bad mood. And so again, this is where the whole self-care comes in. And you're right, it's so important because, we all get frustrated when there's that stubborn high. And you're frustrated, but I'm also the one frustrated. And I think one of the things that we also have found with ourselves is we also both stress our frustrations in very different ways. You're more vocal about them, and I'm more like quiet,
And then you explode.
and then I'll more
And
likely
I'm like,
explode
where is this coming from?
over, yeah. Like, I almost just want, when I'm frustrated, I just want to be left alone.
Yeah.
Because I also know that I'm more likely to say something I shouldn't when I'm very frustrated.
Yeah. And I think a thing about type 1 diabetes, and we've touched on it before, but there's no easy way around it. There's no easy fix for it. So it's not like you could go and they're having a stubborn high. You could still potentially go and change their pump because perhaps it wasn't working properly. But then that means you're still going to have to give them now a new round of insulin. And that's going to take amount of time to go within their bodies. I know when I first part of the family and everything and being more involved with the type 1 diabetes, it did not make sense to me because I think we live in this world where we want everything instantly. All right, well, you just gave them insulin. Like, shouldn't they be coming down? And you're like, no, it takes around like 30 to 45 minutes for it to like really start doing something to the body. And I'm like, so you have to wait that long with a high, even though you're on it, but then on paper, it looks like you're not on it because they're high for so long. So I know that that was a very frustrating thing for me, but it's something I had to remind myself that there's no easy fix for type 1 diabetes. Like, you can't just snap your fingers and it's all going to be great. And you could literally be doing everything right and it could all be going wrong.
It is beyond frustrating. And even the other way, right? We're talking about the highs. When the kids are going low, they're, going down 2 arrows, urgent low.
Mhm.
You just load them up with a bunch of Gatorade, gummies, all that. Why is it still urgent low?
Yeah.
Shouldn't they have, corrected by now? And the Dexcom is always delayed with it, right? And it's frustrating that's the case. So yes, I 100% agree. There's so much with type 1 diabetes it's just hard.
Yeah, and then the great little moments when the kids are sleeping and they roll over on their equipment and it makes them go urgent low when they're really not urgent low.
A compression load.
Yes, those are
Those
just
things could be the most frustrating thing in the world. If you want me to snap, it's a compression low. Because I just got my butt up out of bed to go take care of this, to find out they're not even really low. It's all fake.
okay. So I want to ask you, how does being a caregiver impact you emotionally, mentally, especially when it comes to balancing everything? Because your job is not solely being a caregiver of type 1 diabetes. You still have a career of your own. You still have life to live.
Man, okay, so I'm an entrepreneur, always been my entire life, multiple businesses, and I'll be honest, I'm a workaholic.
Yeah.
Anybody knows me knows I work, and I work a lot, and I love actually working. But due to it, I am not good at balancing it, and it's everything. And so it can be trying to balance being a good husband, being a good father, being a good boss,
Mhm.
right? Like, even for Palmer, I want to make sure I'm always on my game to make sure I'm giving our customers the best experience. If they have a question, I want to be there for them.
Mhm.
I can very easily burn myself out.
Oh, yeah.
And that has always been my biggest thing that happens is I burn myself out. And when that happens, it all starts affecting everything else. And so it's so important that because my kids are so important, their disease is so important, there is no break from it. You feel like you have to be on your game at all times. Can't just not be paying attention. I can't be so far in the zone that I'm not paying attention to what my kids are doing or where their blood sugar is. And so one of the things that I know I had to do is make sure while I'm at the office and working and I'm in meetings a lot with my staff for Threadbird, my employees know that if the school nurse calls, I got to stop what I'm doing.
Yeah.
I got to excuse myself, step outside for a second, answer that call. It cannot wait. And that takes a lot of pressure
Yeah.
at the end of the day. But it's like, it's those type of things I had to do and make sure my staff understood. It's not that they're not important
Or you're being
or
rude.
you're being
Like,
rude.
yeah.
It's hard to do that when I'm talking with clients necessarily. But it's so hard to manage all that. And I found myself really burning myself out a lot
Yeah.
of times.
And I think one thing to hone in on, you kind of touched on it. When the kids are at school, we are so lucky that the school the kids go to, there's such a good nurse and
Oh, yeah.
she's amazing. She loves Parker and Evie like they're her own, and she's very honed in on the diabetes. She does an amazing job at it. But there are still times that she needs to call you for advice on what to do. Something's going on with the equipment. It may not be working properly, whatever the case may be. So I think a lot of people kind of like a blanket statement is when their kids go to school, it's like their time to get stuff done.
Mhm.
So if that's your career, or it's doing stuff around the house, running errands, whatever the case may be, that's when most parents get their stuff done. But for us, we have to always have our phone available and near us where we're going to be able to get it if that school nurse calls. Because it's not anything, like you said, that it could just wait. Yes, we have that break of them being at school, but I wouldn't even go so far calling it a break because we're still on it 24/7. And I know we've mentioned it before, but with the technology, there's an app and you can see their numbers. So even if they're not with us or wherever the case may be, wherever they may be, we still see the numbers. So it could be something that, oh, this is a great example. The other day, it was close to Halloween, and the school nurse calls and says, hey, Parker is doing a science experiment at school, and they have to test out 10 candies, 10 different candies, and they had to eat them and then like describe them. I really don't know the details of it, but it entailed Parker eating 10 different types of candy at a one like period of time.
Yes.
So, I mean, I don't want to talk for you, but like, did she basically call you being like, how do you want to handle this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because she's like, I know this is horrible.
And then
I'm
Nick's
calling you and they're like, hey, yeah, this is what's going on. I'm like, is there a way he can only do three?
Yeah, Nick is like, is there any way he doesn't have to do all 10? He can do some of it. And she basically was like, well, then he'll be like the only one not doing it. And
Yeah.
like he'll stand out.
And what can't actually do the project.
Yeah. And of course, that's the last thing we want for Parker.
Mhm.
He was so high. Even though Nick and the school nurse came up with this beautiful game plan, there was no controlling that. Like, he was high for pretty much more than half of his school day, would you say?
Yeah.
And then it took us getting him, and even, like, we had to, like, kinda delay dinner because he was still so high
Yep.
that it was just affecting everything throughout the day. But what are we don't want them to have to do things differently just because they're type 1 diabetes. Like, we're here to manage it, but it's just still so difficult.
It is. It really is. Wow. So these are things that parents have to think about when their kid is in school.
Yeah.
And I know there's a lot of parents out there who homeschool their kids because of this whole reason, and that's a whole other kind of challenge, I think, at the end of the day. I would love to know from you, Rebecca, what do you feel like really happens when a caregiver neglects their well-being, and how does this affect their ability to, like, care for the children at the end of the day?
So I think, like, speaking for myself and as a stepmom, and I touched on it before, but like we all know, the first thing that goes for me is my sleep. I've had shingles. I never want to go through that ever again. So when you neglect your self care, you basically neglect yourself in a way. But then you ask yourself, well, of course I have to neglect myself. Like Parker and Evie come first. Their lives are basically in our hands when they're with us. We are helping keep them alive, which is a lot and a lot to take on. And it's not like an understatement. I think it affects everything, unfortunately. And I've seen it with you and I, where, we just try to get through it and we just like keep pushing through to the point that we are just so tired and exhausted. And then I think you and I end up on different sides of things, but yet like, cause I remember specifically having a conversation with you, like, early on into our marriage and being like, "Hey, I feel like you and I are, like, fighting for the wrong team right now, but we're actually on the same team, and we want the same, like, output of it, and we want the same thing to happen out of this." And I think that was a very big conversation for us to have because you get in the zone, you're like, I'm just going to keep pushing through until I can get something done. But then you forget that, oh, this might be causing friction between my marriage. This may be causing friction at my work. This may be causing friction to the kids. Like a lot of it, unfortunately, they see it firsthand. They see our frustration. They see like, us being like, "OMG, like, last night we did not sleep at all, like, your blood sugar was being so stubborn," like, all this stuff, and especially at the beginning, I always felt bad, like, I didn't wanna talk about it too much because I felt bad talking about it to Nick or really talking about it to anyone else because anyone else doesn't really get it, and then if I talk to you, I feel like you're just gonna take it as like, "Oh, I'm just ruining her life," like, "Her life's so miserable now because she's a part of this," but I think it's really focusing on how much self-care play such a huge role in your life. And if one little thing is off, it could be sleep, it could be anything in your routine. It could be your Jesus time in the morning, for example, like that you like to do before everyone wakes up. If that one little thing is off, your whole rest of the day is off too, and it's going to be very difficult to get it back on track.
Yeah, there's so much good stuff there. And you're right. Like for me, my morning times are my most important. And when I get off of my morning routine, it throws everything off. I am always the first person up in the morning, and I have a routine that I like to do. And I'm always trying to improve myself. I'm trying to go on walks now. I do my Jesus time. I have my cup of tea, multiple teas typically. Uh, but it's like I have to do these things before anybody else is up. And it's kind of that waking up in the morning. And it's so important that you have those routines and all that. And the other thing I want to touch on is the fact that you talked about how we had to come to that realization of knowing that we're on the same team because it is. Sometimes you start bickering, you start
Mhm.
complaining, you both maybe view something a little bit differently, but we all want the same goal.
Yeah.
And to be able to step back and say, hey, and you were the one that did that, like we were having a little bit of a scuffle, we'll call it. And you're like, hey, why are we even arguing right now? We want the same thing, right? And we're like,
Mhm.
oh yeah, we're on the same team. So let's act like we're on the same team and come up with a solution instead of doing it. Because when you start bickering, you start
Mhm.
fighting, it just makes everything harder for everybody.
Mhm. And I think for me personally, I see it firsthand when I'm super tired and like things that I enjoy doing or my everyday life tasks seem to be really difficult for me to get done or get accomplished. And that's when I really have been thankful for you because you have been able now to see these signs of like, oh, she's like on the verge of like burnout coming soon. Like, I need to come to her and I need to be like, hey, you need to rest. Like, hey, I'll wash Evie's hair tonight. Like, don't worry about that. Like, I'll handle it type of thing. Like, you go in the room and relax and, take care of yourself. And that's really important. But then I also, on the same breath, I struggle with, well, does Nick think I'm lazy? Is Nick disappointed that I'm not there doing Evie's hair? Does this make me a bad stepmom? Does this make me a bad partner to you? Like, it's just all these things that come about. And I think it's so easy to get overwhelmed with the negativity when you're at that point that you're literally reaching burnout point of having negative thoughts fill your brain. And I just think it's very important to just kind of be honest. And like you said, like being very vocal about it. And sometimes I'm a little too vocal, but deal with it. You're going to hear me out because there's a million things going on right now and I need to talk about it. And I think that was something you and I really learned to do at the beginning stages of like learning our love languages. Even how silly that sounds, knowing what our love languages are and like how we better how we work better and how we're happier and just knowing that mine is words of affirmation. And so even though you're super appreciative that I did X, Y, and Z, if you don't tell me it, I don't feel that love from you and that appreciation from you. And I know at the beginning of my role of being a stepmom is a very thankless job.
Oh, it
Like,
yeah, it is thankless.
yeah, like, there's really no other way I can describe it. Being honest with you and saying, "Hey, like, I need you to tell me sometimes that I'm doing a really good job and that you're grateful that I'm on your team." And yes, the kids will tell me they love me and they'll do things that are super sweet for me. But at the end of the day, like, it's you, my partner, that I wanna hear, like, "You're doing a good job," like, "You're doing good," like, "Hey, take this time to do this." And then I also think I would say therapy.
Oh,
Huge.
therapy has been a huge thing for us.
Therapy has been so huge. My morning routines look different than Nick's morning routines. I don't like waking up early. Like, it's just, I've never been a morning person. Like, I like to wake up and like gradually work myself to being woken up and doing my own routine in that way. I've learned to like write things down have been a really big thing for me. Like, even if I know it's better, I've been told it's better to actually write it down on a piece of paper, but even like getting my notes app out of my phone and just writing some thoughts that I have or ideas that I have instead of they all just living in my head really helps with my self-care too.
Yeah, that is great. And it is. It's so powerful. Like, and it's all about understanding what your personal needs are, because everybody's needs is different. My morning routine is very different than your morning routine. And you have to one be accepting of that with each other. But it's before that you figure out what works for you. I used to be a stay up late type of person. I have now morphed into more of a go to bed early and have wake up earlier because I want to be up before anybody else in the house so I can do my morning routine because that's what I need. And that's what was important for myself. So, with the holidays coming up, what are some self care tips that you can share with other caregivers?
Yeah. So I think this is really important because my first year of being married, I wanted to be this perfect little wife and perfect little stepmom, and I had everything together, and I didn't. I think the next few years, I really put the focus away of being this like perfect, like, who am I being perfect for? Parker and Evie know what I do for them. You know what I do for you. So it's like getting that perfection out the door Like, it's not even an option anymore for me. And I really think, like, being honest with myself on what I can take and what I cannot take on. For example, all my family lives here locally. You have some family, I mean, your parents live now, they've moved like around like an hour away from us, and then your siblings live further away than that. There's sometimes that I think you should go see your parents and even take the kids to go see them. But I am physically so drained that I just can't do it. And I think being honest with you and being like, hey, like, I really want to see them and like, I want to spend time with them, but I'm just not good right now. Like, I'm just so tired. Like, I need you to take this on and you go do it. And I wouldn't say that that came very easy for me because I remember the first time we tried it out, the whole time I was texting you, like, are they mad I'm not there? What are they saying about me not being there? But again, these are things in my head
Yeah.
because your parents also want me to rest.
Yes.
They also want me to be good because they know when I'm good to you, I'm good to Parker and Evie,
Mm.
I can handle it more.
And it's so important with, you really touched on something of we always try to be a people pleaser to everybody around us.
Yeah.
And we always try to think about everybody else because that's what we were told to do. You have to be a good host. You need to host. You need to do this.
Mhm.
And we burn ourselves out. We're stressed out. How many people out there end up hating the holidays
Oh, yeah.
because the holidays are a time of stress? Because all you're trying to do is impress everybody around you. If you can get to a point where you only care about what your family thinks, and when I say family, it's like, are you being a good husband? Are you being a good wife? And not the in laws or the parents or this or that.
Yeah.
If they are going to be upset with you because your house was not perfect,
Mhm.
that you didn't go above and beyond and burn yourself out, that's a problem. And so many
And
people
that's not your problem.
yeah,
That's their problem,
that's
unfortunately.
their problem, and that's what happens. And there are people out there that that's what they expect,
Mhm.
and they put that pressure onto you. And you have to almost break that curse, right? And put your foot down, build the boundaries of saying, no,
Yeah.
I got to do what's best for me. If I do this right now, there's going to be a bad effect that happens. I'm going to snowball out of control, and it's not going to be good for anybody.
Yeah.
And when you do that, the people that you love the most, you end up hurting the most
Yeah.
at the end of the day, which is why the self-care is so important.
So one thing I started this year was I started planning really early. I got myself on text threads with Nick's siblings of like, hey, please send me our nieces and nephews' Christmas wish list items and when are you guys going to be in town? And just, I have realized that that helps me. Even though I look like a freak texting about Thanksgiving plans or Christmas plans like the day after Halloween, I'm going to do it because it levels me and it makes me feel like, okay, I have a better grasp of what we're doing. I have a little bit better control of my emotions and I know what to expect. It's nothing that's going to come out of nowhere. And of course, living with type 1 diabetes, things can come out things can come out of nowhere. Equipment can fall off when we're an hour away from home or we have to pack this stuff if we're going further away. So, I at least try to control the things I can control, which is planning things in advance. So that's been really helpful for me this year.
And the whole controlling what you can control and needing to let go to things that you can't is so important. And that's a struggle. Or I would like to think for most people in this world that it's a struggle. I know we struggle with it.
Mhm.
And especially with being a blended family, being a family with 2 kids with type 1 diabetes,
Mhm.
it is so hard to be able to do that
Yeah.
because we want to be able to control everything. We want to be able to control their blood sugar and everything that happens, and the equipment never breaks or, stops working properly. But that's just not the reality.
Yeah. And I think now that I was hearing you talk, I think it's really important too, as a caregiver, to manage other people's expectations of you and of your family and of the kids and what you can give. Because, for example, I know when we first got married, there was these like high expectations that we can do everything another family could do when they don't have kids with type 1 diabetes. And in all reality, do we want our kids to live the most normal life? 1000%. We have always strived for that. But there's some things that are just harder for us to do. At the beginning, when we first, blended our family, we like got really, I feel like you and I both got really in our heads of like, oh, they think we're not fun. Oh, they think we're uptight. Oh, like I feel like every time we hang out with this family, something always goes wrong with like managing the diabetes, or something is up, or this person is sick. And it's like, do people like not even want to hang out with us anymore? And I think that's again another easy spiral you can go down very quickly. And I think it's just managing your expectations. For example, my nephews, when we have Parker and Evie, they always want to be having sleepovers, and so does Parker. Parker always wants to have a sleepover with Reagan in Houston. He loves his times with his cousins, and where we do it a lot. And it's obviously, we do it at our house because we can manage the diabetes and it's just easier that way. But there are some times that, you have to think about it realistically. You're doubling the amount of kids in your house. You're doubling the amount of noise. You're doubling the amount of everything, excitement and everything. So you have to be honest with yourself of like times of like, hey, can I take on this sleepover? Or would it be best if we just do it the following week? That expectation of being honest with like family and friends, like, hey, we just went through this horrible night. Like, we're probably not going to be our best today. So we're probably going to sit this one out. And I think that's been really helpful for us too.
I agree. So, one of Palmer's mottos is to wear your self care.
Yes.
And I think we should really kind of dive into that because we started Palmer
Mm-hmm.
with this whole mission of self care because of our life being crazy
Mm-hmm.
and the fact that we have 2 kids with type 1 diabetes all the time. Let's kind of talk about that and why we are doing what we're doing with our clothing brand and how they came to be, I guess.
Yeah. So I think when we were first like beginning stages of Palmer, we wanted everyone to feel included. And we didn't, and the main purpose of creating these garments with pockets that incorporate slits for a diabetic to be able to feed their tubing through, like that's a way of us to help a type 1 diabetic, for example, to feel like, oh, this brand gets me and I can wear the same thing as my non-diabetic bestie and we look the same. Our clothes don't look any different. It looks the same. And then with that, I think we gotta hone in more because, Nick and I don't have type 1 diabetes. We're just caregivers to them. So it's what makes us feel good. And for me, for example, I have gone through a journey with my body image, and my body has changed throughout the years from highs and lows of my mental health. And, my weight has varied. So I always feel like, especially when we're picking out clothes or we're trying on something or we're trying to figure out the next thing to bring into our line, I want to make sure it's something that everyone's going to look good in it, not just your supermodel weight or height or anything like that. I want everyone to feel like, oh, I have some curves, but I still look good in this dress too, or whatever the case may be. And I think it's being like comfortable and being like confident when you put on the piece of clothing. And I think for me, that's really where the wear your self care kind of came into play. And it's just like having your piece of clothing as a reminder of, hey, I take care of myself. And when I do take care of myself, I'm the best version of myself.
Beautiful. Love it. And for us, one of our favorite ways for us to take care of ourselves is doing these mini vacations.
Yeah.
And our favorite place is tropical. You've talked about it before. Anybody knows us. We want to go to someplace with the beach. There's just something peaceful about that. Even if it's for a day,
Mhm.
let's go to the beach and enjoy ourselves. We made sure it's tropical for our honeymoon, and so, like, I rule with our clothes, we always kinda felt like we wanna feel like we're always on vacation,
Yeah.
which is why we went very tropical with it, right? Like, I'm wearing this today, and it's fun, it's tropical, like, I want to feel like I'm at the beach or going to the beach
Yeah.
at all times.
And I would say too, it's not just these little staycation or trips that Nick and I do on our own. It's our family trips because our kiddos love to be in the water. They have told us, I feel like I forget I have type 1 diabetes when I'm swimming. And it's kind of ironic that they say that because when you're swimming, you're still having to take them out of the water, every 30 minutes for them to sync up with their equipment to see what their numbers are at.
Yeah.
But even with doing that, they still feel like they're free and they just don't they forget about having type 1 diabetes. And that was always so important for us. So I think our clothing not only brings us back to, feeling like that vibes of being on vacation, it also reminds us of our family vacations that we have such good moments on.
Yes. And for the people who don't know and understand, the reason they feel free is because they have to take all their equipment off. And so it's a little bit different for everyone, but for our kids, they always have a cell phone with them that is connected to their Dexcom, their monitor. And then they also have an insulin pump and they're on the tandem. And so it's a tube pump, but they will unplug it and put it away because they can't jump in the pool
Yeah.
with that on there. And so for once, they don't have to have any equipment on them.
Mhm.
And that is what really kind of makes them feel like they don't have it. Even though they got to get out and do a physical check and all that,
Mhm.
that's what it's all about.
Yeah. And even if you're not in our same shoes, that you're a caregiver for somebody but with type 1 diabetes, you still at the end of the day are a caregiver and you're a caregiver to yourself because your health, your mental health, your physical health is important and it's required to be taken care of in order to survive. Even if, for example, this relax shirt that I'm wearing today, that Nick always likes to tell me I need to relax.
She wearing, I'm like, I really think you need to go relax.
Yes, his dad jokes.
I would love to know from you, Rebecca, what is your favorite ways to practice self care?
I would say my first one, number one on my list would be therapy. I have learned so much about myself in therapy. I've learned so much about our marriage in therapy. I've learned so much about being a caregiver. And I just like being able to talk about things and the feeling of being so free after I talk about something and just getting it out there and just feel like I'm being heard has always been so important to me. So I would say therapy is like my number one thing right now. And then besides that, just some easy things I like tips for me have been if my body is the best indication of what's going on. So if I feel super drained, super tired, that's not normal. I'm going to be honest and I'm going to take a break for a little bit. And I'm not going to feel guilty about taking a break. Okay, so Nick, you've talked before about the importance of focusing on yourself to be the best dad you can to your kids. What was your turning point in realizing self care was so essential?
It really came down to when I realized that I was burning myself out. I am someone that goes 100 miles per hour at all time. When I say I probably work 80 hours a week, that is not an exaggeration.
No, it's
And I
right.
love to work. It's probably more. She's right. Like, I just don't ever stop. And my brain never stops. I'm always thinking, I'm always have a million things that I want to do. And I realized that I started really burning myself out. And when that happened, everything else falls apart around you.
Hmm.
And it's still a big struggle for me today because there's that saying where when you try to be the master of everything, you end up being the master of none. And you feel like that's the case a lot of times. Because I'm always trying to balance everything. And you really came to me and were concerned about me, thinking that I would literally have a heart attack.
Yeah.
'Cause there was a part earlier this year where I was probably the most stressed that I had ever been in my entire life. There was so much going on, and
And it wasn't really any new stuff. It was just life was just really lifing at that point.
yeah, and I was not handling it well. My stress was through the roof,
Yeah.
and my mental health was failing me. You had to come to me and tell me, say, "Hey, you need to back up. You need to slow down, and you need to start focusing more stuff on yourself. What can you do? What were you doing before? What do you need to let go
Mhm.
and focus on yourself? Because if not, I'm not gonna be around for my kids. If I burn myself out and give myself a heart attack because my stress is through the roof, I won't be there for you, and I won't be there for my kids at the end of the day."
Yeah. And I think too, like, I had to be blunt with you and be like, hey, like, you might be thinking in your head you're getting all these things accomplished, but you're actually getting nothing accomplished because you're just running in circles with yourself and you're getting nothing done. You're chasing your tail over and over again and nothing is getting done. That's not the easiest conversation to have, but it came to a point, I feel like your like burnout signs of, like, when I'm like, "Okay, he's getting there, like, he's reaching the point of, like, burnout," is when you start to self-doubt yourself so much. Like, everything about you is like, "Oh, I'm not good at this, I'm not good at that, I can't handle this, like, I'm not the best at this," and it's like, "Wait, no, like, you actually are." Like, nothing has changed, it's just everything going on in your head is making you believe these negative thoughts about yourself. And then when that starts fueling in you, then your like spiral starts to
Yeah,
get bad.
and I didn't even realize that you just said that it's and because 'cause you're right. It's like my self-doubt really kicks in at that point, and I get really hard on myself. I am always my worst critic.
Yeah. Well, I think we all are. To a
Probably.
point. Yeah.
Good point, but I take it very hard, and I hold myself to a such a high standard that's honestly unrealistic.
Yeah. And you came to me early on in our marriage and said, I feel the best when I feel confident and when I know that like you're on my team and you're backing me up. So I really took that to heart. And, if there was a moment that I found myself that I wanted to like be mad at you about something or argue with you about something, I would ask myself, is this really helping anybody? It's not because I'm just in return going to make you feel like I'm not on your team and I'm working against you. So that was definitely something that we had to kind of learn about ourselves. And I would say therapy was a really big helper in that of being honest of like, hey, when we reach these points, the other person's going to have to be a little stronger for a little bit and be, the voice of reason of like, hey, this is what's going on, this is what we need to do.
Yeah, and the therapy is so powerful, and if you're not in therapy, I know there's some people who think that you only need therapy when you're having massive problems or this or that. That is not. I mean, yes, therapy helps with that too, but having someone to talk through things is so eye-opening at the
Yeah.
end of the day, and it's so powerful, and I'm a big fan of therapy. It's something I never even started on until the last few years, and
Yeah.
it is great, and you gotta make sure you find the right therapist too that you can just really build that relationship with, who understands what you're going through and can, more importantly, call you out when you need to be.
Yeah. And I think another thing to point out too is that with especially for us, like type 1 diabetes is so expensive. Like everything that goes into type 1 diabetes, it's just expensive. There's no other way to kind of say it. If you're a caregiver and you find yourself not with the ability to be in therapy, that is another big reason why we're doing what we're doing with this channel, with this community we're trying to build. Like, even if we're not able to, like, we're not therapists of our own, but we want you to still feel a sense of, okay, I'm not alone in this. Like, I'm able to hear stories and also share my stories with them. And, maybe listen to an episode that relates to what I'm currently going through. So I think building that community around you too is another game changer in your self care routine.
Wow, so that was really good. Hopefully, you guys got a lot out of this.
This was fun. I felt like it was needed, and I feel like there'll definitely be more episodes like this because as the seasons change, so does all of our self-care and what goes on with our bodies and everything.
And this is a topic that if we really wanted to, we could talk for hours.
Oh, yeah.
And we don't want to go that far for your guys' sake, but we will be continuing this conversation in the future.
Yeah.
I hope you guys have just really enjoyed this, what we're doing, and finding it beneficial.
Yeah, and we want to hear from you. That's a really important part of what we're doing here. We want to hear from you. So comment, DM us, however you are on social media and find a way to communicate with us. Let us know what you want to hear. Let us know questions that you have for us or questions on how we've dealt with things. We really want to hear from you and feel like the conversation's going both ways.
Perfect. All right.
All right, well, thank you so much for being here again, and we are so excited for the next one. Bye, Palmr fam.